Hi, and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. Today we're continuing in our story, Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella. If you'll remember, this book doesn't have like chapters, so we are continuing in part 1, and this will be section 2 of part 1. In section 1 of part 1, basically, Ray built left field, only left field, in his cornfield. Oh, sorry, trying to move you a little closer. All right, so he has left field built. It's lovely, and he's just anticipating that something will happen. So we will see what's going to happen. One night, I watched Annie looking out the window. She is soft as a butterfly, Annie is, with an evil grin and a tongue that travels at the speed of light. Her jeans are painted to her body, and her black t-shirt has the single word R-A-H, raw, emblazoned in waspish yellow capital letters. Her red hair is short and curly. She has the green eyes of a cat. Annie understands, though. It is me she understands, and not always what is happening. She attends ball games with me and squeezes my arm when there's a hit, but her heart isn't in it, and she would just as soon be at home. She loses interest if the score isn't close, or the weather's not warm, or the pace isn't fast enough. To me, it is baseball, and that is all that matters. It's the game that's important, the tension, the strategy, the ballet of the fielders, and the angle of the bat. There's someone on your lawn, Annie says to me, staring out into the orange-tinned dusk. I can't see him clearly, but I can tell someone is there. She was quite right, at least, about it being my lawn, although it is not in the strictest sense of the word a lawn. It is left field. I have been more restless than usual this night. I have sensed the magic drawing closer, hovering somewhere out in the night like a zeppelin, silky and silent, floating like the moon until the time is right. Annie peeks through the drapes. There is a man out there. I can see his silhouette. He's wearing a baseball uniform, an old-fashioned one. It's Shoeless Joe Jackson, I say. My heart sounds like someone flicking a balloon with his index finger. Oh, she says. Annie stays very calm in emergencies. She band-aids bleeding fingers and toes and patches the bumbling with gum and good wishes. Staying calm makes her able to live with me. The French have the right words for Annie. She has a good heart. Is he the Jackson on TV? The one you yell, "Drop it, Jackson," at? Annie's sense of baseball history is not highly developed. No, that's Reggie. This is Shoeless Joe Jackson. He hasn't played Major League Baseball since 1920. Well, Ray, aren't you going to go out and chase him off your lawn or something? Yes. What am I going to do? I wish someone else understood. Perhaps my daughter will. She has an evil grin and bewitching eyes and loves to climb into my lap and watch television baseball with me. There is a magic about her. I think I'll go upstairs and read for a while, Annie says. Why don't you invite Shoeless Jack in for coffee? I feel the greatest tenderness toward her then. something akin to the rush of love I felt the first time I held my daughter in my arms. Annie senses that magic is about to happen. She knows she is not part of it. My impulse is to pull her to me as she walks by, the denim of her thighs making a tiny music. But I don't. She will be waiting for me. As I step out onto the veranda, I can hear the steady drone of the crowd, like bees humming on a white afternoon, and the voices of the vendors, like crows cawing. A ground mist, like wisps of gauze, snakes in slow circular motions just above the grass. The grass is as soft as baby's breath, I say to the moonlight. On the porch wall, I find the switch and the single battery of floodlights I have erected behind the left field fence sputters to life. I've tended it like I would my own baby. It has been powdered and lotioned and loved. It is ready. Moonlight butters the whole Iowa night. Clover and corn smells thick as syrup. I experience a tingling like the tiniest of electric wires touching the back of my neck, sending warm sensations through me. Then, as the lights flare, a scar against the blue-black sky, I see Shoeless Joe Jackson standing out in left field. His feet spread wide, body bent forward from the waist, hands on hips. He waits. I hear the sharp crack of the bat, and Shoeless Joe drifts effortlessly. Okay, effortlessly. Here we go. A few steps to his left, raises his right hand to signal for the ball, camps under it for a second or two, catches it, at the same time transferring it to his throwing hand and fires it into the infield. I make my way to left field, walking in the darkness far outside the third base line, behind where the third base stands would be. I climb up on the wobbly bleacher behind the fence. I can look right down on Shoeless Joe. He fields a single on a hop and pegs the ball to third. How does it play? I holler down. The ball bounces true, he replies. I know. I am smiling with pride and my heart thumps mightily against my ribs. I've hit 1,000 line drives and as many grounders. It's true as a felt top table. It is, says Shoeless Joe. It is true. I lean back and watch the game. From where I sit, the scene is as complete as in any of the Major League Baseball parks I've ever visited. The two teams, the stands, the fans, the lights, the vendors, the scoreboard. The only difference is that I sit alone in the left field bleacher, and the only player who seems to have substance is Shoeless Joe Jackson. When Joe's team is at bat, the left fielder below me is transparent, as if he were made of vapor. He performs mechanically, but seems not to have facial features. We do not converse. A great amphitheater of grandstand looms dark against the sky. The park is surrounded by decks of flooded lights, making it brighter than day. The crowd buzzes. The vendors hawk their wares, and I cannot keep the promise I made to myself not to ask Shoeless Joe Jackson about his suspension and what it means to him. While the pitcher warms up for the third inning, we talk. It must have been like, but I can't find the words, like having a part of me amputated, slick and smooth and painless. Joe looks up at me, and his dark eyes seem about to burst with the pain of it. A friend of mine used to tell about the war, how him and a buddy was running across a field when a piece of shrapnel took his friend's head off, and how the friend ran headless for several strides before he fell. I'm told that old men wake in the night and scratch itchy legs that have been dust for 50 years. That was me. Years and years later, I'd wake in the night with the smell of the ballpark in my nose and the cool of the grass on my feet. The thrill, the grass. How I wish my father could be here with me. If he'd lasted just a few months longer, he could have watched our grainy black and white TV as Bill Mazeroski homered in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Yankees 10-9. We would have joined hands and danced around the kitchen like madmen. The Yankees lose so seldom, you have to celebrate every single time, he used to say. We were always going to go to a Major League Baseball game, he and I. But the time was never right. The money always needed for something else. One of the last days of his life, late in the night while I sat with him because the pain wouldn't let him sleep, the radio picked up a staticky station broadcasting a White Sox game. He hunched over the radio and cheered them on, but they lost. Dad told the story of the Black Sox scandal for the last time. Told of seeing 2 of those World Series games. Told of the way Shoeless Joe Jackson hit. Told the dimensions of Comiskey Park and how, during the series, the mobsters in striped suits sat in the box seats with their colorful women, watching the game and perhaps making plans to go out later and kill a rival. You must go, Dad said. I've been in all 16 major league parks. I want you to do it too. The summers belong to somebody else now. Have for a long time. I nodded agreement. Hell, you know what I mean, he said, shaking his head. I did indeed. I loved the game, Shoeless Joe went on. I'd have played for food money. I'd have played free and worked for food. It was the game, the parks, the smells, the sounds. Have you ever held a bat or a baseball to your face? The varnish, the leather, and it was the crowd, the excitement of them rising as one when the ball was hit deep. The sound was like a chorus. Then there was the chug-a-lug of the tin Lizzies in the parking lots, and the hotels with their brass spittoons in the lobbies and brass beds in the rooms. It makes me tingle all over like a kid on his way to his first doubleheader just to talk about it. The year after Annie and I were married, the year we first rented this farm, I dug Annie's garden for her, dug it by hand, stepping a spade into the soft black soil, ruining my salesman's hands. After I finished, it rained, an Iowa spring rain, as soft as spray from a warm hose. The clods of earth I had dug seemed to melt until the garden leveled out, looking like a patch of black ocean. It was near noon on a gentle Sunday when I walked out to that garden. The soil was soft and my shoes disappeared as I plodded until I was near the center. There I knelt, the soil cool on my knees. I looked up at the low gray sky. The rain had stopped, and the only sound was the surrounding trees dripping fragrantly. Suddenly, I thrust my hands wrist deep into the snuffy black earth. The air was pure. All around me, the clean smell of earth and water. Keeping my hands buried, I stirred the earth with my fingers and knew I loved Iowa as much as a man could love a piece of earth. When I came back to the house, Annie stopped me at the door, made me wait on the veranda, and then hosed me down as if I were a door with too many handprints on it, while I tried to explain my epiphany. It is very difficult to describe an experience of religious significance while you are being sprayed with a garden hose by a laughing, loving woman. What happened to the sun? Shoeless Joe says to me, waving his hand towards the banks of floodlights that surround the park. Only stadium in the big leagues that doesn't have them is Wrigley Field, I say. The owners found that more people could attend night games. They even play the World Series at night now. Joe purses his lips, considering. It's harder to see the ball, especially at the plate. When there are breaks, they usually go against the ball players, right? But I notice you're 3 for 3 so far, I add, looking down at his uniform, the only identifying marks a large S with an O in the top crook and an X in the bottom, and an American flag with 48 stars on his left sleeve near the elbow. Joe grins. I'd play for the Devil's own team just for the touch of a baseball. Hell, I'd play in the dark if I had to. I want to ask about that day in 1951. If he'd lived another few years, things might have been different. There was a move afoot to have his record cleared, but it died with him. I wanted to ask, but my instinct told me not to. There are things it is better not to know. It is one of those nights when the sky is close enough to touch. So close that looking up is like seeing my own eyes reflected in a rain barrel. I sit in the bleacher just outside the left field fence. I clutch in my hand a hot dog with mustard, onions, and green relish. The voice of the crowd roars in my ear. The chords of the Star-Spangled Banner and Take Me Out to the Ball Game float across the field. A Coke bottle is propped against my thigh, squat, greenish, the ice cream-haired elf grinning conspiratorially from the cap. I don't know what that's all about. Below me in left field, Shoeless Joe Jackson glides over the plush velvet grass, silent as a jungle cat. He prowls and paces, crouches ready to spring as, nearly 300 feet away, the ball is pitched. At the sound of the bat, he wafts in whatever direction is required, as if he were on ball bearings. Then the intrusive sound of a slamming screen door reaches me, and I blink and start. I recognize it as the sound of the door to my house, and looking into the distance, I can see a shape that I know is my daughter, toddling down the back steps. Perhaps the light or the crowd have awakened her, and she has somehow eluded Annie. I judge the distance to the steps. I am just inside of the foul pole, which is exactly 330 feet from home plate. I tense. Karen will surely be drawn to the lights and the emerald dazzle of the infield. If she touches anything, I fear it will all disappear, perhaps forever. Then, as if she senses my discomfort, she stumbles away from the lights, walking in the ragged fringe of darkness well outside the third base line. She trails a blanket behind her, one tiny fist rubbing a sleepy eye. She is barefoot and wears a white flannelette nightgown covered in an explosion of daisies. She climbs up the bleacher, alternating a knee and a foot on each step, and crawls into my lap silently, like a kitten. I hold her close and wrap the blanket around her feet. The play goes on. Her innocence has not disturbed the balance. What is it? She says shyly, her eyes indicating she means all that she sees. Just watch the left fielder, I say. He'll tell you all you ever need to know about a baseball game. Watch his feet as the pitcher accepts the sign and gets ready to pitch. A good left fielder knows what pitch is coming, and he can tell from the angle of the bat where the ball is going to be hit. And if he's good, how hard. I look down at Karen. She cocks one green eye at me, wrinkling her nose, then snuggles into my chest, the index finger of her right hand tracing tiny circles around her nose. The crack of the bat is sharp as the yelp of a kicked cur. Shoeless Joe whirls, takes 5 loping strides directly towards us, turns again, reaches up, and the ball smacks into his glove. The final batter dawdles in on the on-deck circle. Can I come back again? Joe asks. I built this left field for you. It's yours anytime you want to use it. They play 162 games a season now. There are others, he says. If you were to finish the infield, why, old Chick Gandil could play first base. And we'd have the Swede at shortstop and Buck Weaver at third. I can feel his excitement rising. We could stick McMullen in at second and Eddie Siakot and Lefty Williams would like to pitch again. Do you think you could finish center field? It would mean a lot to Happy Felch. Consider it done, I say, hardly thinking of the time, the money, and the back-breaking labor it would entail. Consider it done, I say again, then suddenly stop as an idea creeps into my brain, like a runner inching off first base. I know a catcher, I say. He never made the majors, but in his prime, he was good, really good. Played Class B ball in Florida and California. We could give him a try, says Shoeless Joe. You give us a place to play, and we'll look at your catcher. I swear the stars have moved in close enough to eavesdrop as I sit in this single rickety bleacher that I built with unskilled hands, looking down at Shoeless Joe Jackson. A breath of clover travels on the summer wind. Behind me, just yards away, brook water splashes softly in the darkness. A frog shrills. Fireflies dazzle the night like red pepper. A petal falls. God, what an outfield, he says. What a left field. He looks up at me, and I look down at him. This must be heaven, he says. No, it's Iowa, I reply automatically. But then I feel the night rubbing softly against my face like cherry blossoms, looking at the sleeping girl child in my arms, her small hand curled around one of my fingers. Think of the fierce warmth of the woman waiting for me in the house. Inhale the fresh cut grass smell that seems locked in the air like permanent incense, and listen to the drone of the crowd as below me, Shoeless Joe Jackson tenses, watching the angle of the distant bat for a clue as to where the ball will be hit. I think you're right, Joe, I say, but softly enough not to disturb his concentration. And that is the end of part 1. Part 2 is like most of the book. So we'll definitely be breaking that up into sections. I think is probably the best way to do that. All right, you guys. Oh, sorry. I got you up close and I'm bumping into the table here. Thank you for joining me. I do want to remind you real quick, since we're just beginning the book, to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There are right now 2 other books there. Of course, there'll be more eventually. And when you do subscribe, if you click the bell tab, then you'll get updates every time I post a new video. So you'll be up to date with all the videos. All right, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.